Somewhere in suburban Atlanta, in the spring of 2007, a roofing crew finished a stucco home with a roof that met a sidewall above the front door. The transition between the roof slope and that sidewall is the single most failure-prone joint in American residential construction, and the building science literature has known this for nearly 30 years. At that joint, where the bottom of the roof meets the wall and the gutter begins, there is supposed to be a small piece of bent metal called a kickout flashing. The kickout costs about $4 at any Home Depot in Georgia, and it has been required by the Model Building Code in the United States since the 2009 edition of the International Residential Code. The roofer that day did not install one. He did not install one because the inspector that day had 31 stops on his route, because the framing inspection had already passed and the inspector was not coming back, and because the kickout is the kind of detail that only matters when it rains for 3 years in a row. By 2014, the wall sheathing inside that house had turned to wet cardboard. By 2017, the homeowner was looking at a repair estimate for $38,000, and a mold remediation team in white suits was carrying biohazard bags out of the front entryway. The $4 piece of metal that would have prevented all of it was sitting on a shelf in aisle 23 of the same Home Depot the contractor had driven past every morning for 14 years. This is how 7 out of 10 new American homes are being finished right now. What you are about to see is one of 73 documented failures in the American Homeowner's Field Guide, linked in the first line of the description below. I will come back to it later. For now, stay with the joint. Stay with the $4 piece of metal, because the math on this one is not complicated, and the consequences are not theoretical. The contractor who finished that Atlanta home in 2007 charged approximately $18,000 for the roof, which is consistent with Home Advisor pricing data for asphalt shingle re-roofs in metropolitan Atlanta during that period for a home of roughly 2,400 square feet. What that price did not include, in roughly 7 out of 10 cases, according to multiple insurance industry forensic studies, was the kickout flashing at the wall-to-roof intersection. The kickout is not a mystery component, and it is not an upgrade, and it is not optional. It is required by International Residential Code Section R 903.2.1, which has mandated it in the Model Code since the 2009 edition. It is sold pre-bent at every major building supply house in the United States for between $3 and $6 per piece. The reason it gets skipped is the same reason every cheap construction failure in American residential construction gets skipped. There is no profit in installing it. There is enormous profit in repairing the damage it would have prevented. This is not one bad roofer in Atlanta. This is the standard model documented in tens of thousands of insurance claims, court records, and engineering forensics reports across every state where it rains. The names in the documents change from year to year and from state to state, but the failure mode is identical, and the $4 component that would have prevented it is identical. Pause for 15 seconds. What you just heard is failure number 41 in the American Homeowner's Field Guide. 73 documented failures. Foundation cracks from missing vapor barriers under concrete slabs in expansive soil regions. Joist hanger errors that collapse residential decks during family gatherings. Roof flashing details that destroy entire wall systems in 7 years. Crawl space failures that rot the floor framing from below over a single decade. Stucco wall systems with no weep screed that bring entire homes down to the studs. Each failure with the exact product name, the cost of materials at Home Depot or Lowe's today, the building code section that was violated, and the contractor markup they charged when they built the house. The American Homeowner's Field Guide is $27. The repair on the failure you just heard about cost that family in Atlanta $38,000. The link is the first line in the description below this video. One access, permanently. Now back to what is actually happening behind the wall of 7 out of every 10 new American homes built since 2007. The Building Science Corporation, founded by Joseph Lstiburek, has been publishing peer-reviewed papers on this exact failure mode since the late 1990s. Lstiburek calls it the most common single point of failure in American residential construction. The peer-reviewed building science literature is unanimous on the subject. The contractors continue to skip it anyway, because the contractors do not pay for the damage. The mold remediation industry alone in the United States generates approximately $4 billion a year in revenue, and the single largest source of residential mold remediation work, according to the Indoor Air Quality Association, is rotted wall cavities behind kick-out flashing locations that were never installed. The geometry is what makes the failure inevitable. When a sloped roof meets a vertical wall, water running down the roof valley accelerates as it approaches the bottom edge of the roof. At the bottom edge, where the roof terminates against the wall, that water has nowhere to go except either into the gutter to its left or sideways into the wall sheathing to its right. The kick-out flashing exists for one purpose and one purpose only. It is a small bent piece of metal, usually aluminum or galvanized steel, that creates a barrier at the exact bottom corner of the roof to wall intersection and forces the water laterally outward, into the gutter, away from the wall. Without it, water hits that corner at velocity, and roughly 30% of the volume bypasses the gutter entirely and runs sideways into the wall behind the siding. One more time. 73 failures. One link. $27. The American Homeowner's Field Guide is in the first line of the description. Every day this video is online, hundreds of new American homes are being finished without kick-out flashing. The math is not complicated. A $4 piece of metal versus a $38,000 repair, multiplied by 7 out of every 10 homes built since 2007. Read it tonight before the rot in your own wall reaches year 7. Now let me show you exactly how the failure unfolds inside the wall, year by year, after the roofer drives away and the family moves in. The first thing you have to understand is that this is a slow-motion failure, the slowest moving construction failure documented in residential building science, and that is precisely what makes it so dangerous. A deck collapse is loud and immediate and impossible to ignore. A foundation crack is visible the first time you walk into the basement. But a kick-out flashing failure is silent for years, and by the time it stops being silent, the damage is already catastrophic, and the warranty is already expired. That water runs down the wall sheathing, behind the house wrap, behind the siding, into the bottom plate of the wall, and into the rim joist of the floor system below. It does not show up on the interior wall. It does not stain the drywall. It does not drip from the ceiling. It does not trigger any of the warning signs that homeowners have been trained to look for over a lifetime of watching home improvement television. For the first 2 years, the homeowner sees absolutely nothing. The wall feels normal. The paint looks fine. The smell is not yet there. For the next 2 years, the homeowner notices a faint, musty smell near the front door, but cannot identify the source. He blames the welcome mat. He blames the dog. He blames the humidity. He buys an air freshener and tells himself the problem is solved. By year 5, the paint near the bottom of the wall begins to show small dark specks, which are mold colonies pushing through the drywall from the backside of the wall after years of growth in the cavity. The homeowner wipes them off with a sponge, and they come back in 2 weeks. By year 6, the baseboard near the front door begins to swell at the bottom. The trim starts to separate from the wall, and the homeowner finally calls a contractor. By year 7, when somebody finally cuts open the wall to investigate, the framing has rotted to the point where a screwdriver pushes through the studs without resistance. At that point, the repair is not a flashing repair. It is a structural repair, and it is a mold remediation, and it is a complete reconstruction of the affected wall and likely several adjacent walls. The wall sheathing has to be removed. The studs have to be replaced, sometimes the entire stud bay including king studs and trimmers. The bottom plate has to be replaced because it is the lowest point, and rot accumulates there first. The rim joist has to be evaluated by a structural engineer to determine whether the rot has spread into the floor system below the affected wall. The subfloor under the affected wall has to be inspected and often partially replaced. The insulation in the wall cavity has to be discarded as biohazard material, not regular construction debris. The drywall has to be replaced on both the affected wall and any adjacent walls where mold spores have spread through the wall cavity. The interior trim, baseboards, casings, and crown molding all have to be replaced. The paint has to be redone, often across the entire room, because partial repaints never match. And a certified mold remediation team has to be brought in to handle the spores that have already entered the heating and air conditioning system through return air ducts. The going rate for that complete scope of work in any major American metro area in 2026 runs between $24,000 and $60,000. The Atlanta home in this video came in at $38,000, which is roughly the median for a single intersection failure caught at year 7. For a $4 piece of metal that the original roofer chose not to install. What the contractor needed for that Atlanta house was 4 pieces of pre-bent kickout flashing. The product is sold under several brand names that any homeowner can verify with a 30-second search. Quick Flash makes a polypropylene version with a built-in sealant flange. Dryflect makes a polypropylene version that has been third-party tested and meets International Residential Code requirements. Amerimax makes a galvanized steel version sold at Home Depot and Lowe's for between $3 and $6 per piece. Any of the 3 would have prevented the failure completely. Total material cost, under $25 for an entire house. Total labor, 15 minutes during the original roof installation, if installed correctly the first time. Total labor, if retrofitted later, before damage occurs. Approximately 1 hour per location, because the bottom course of siding has to be carefully lifted to slide the kickout into place behind it. That retrofit, done by a competent roofer, runs between $200 and $400 per location in 2026 pricing. For a typical home with 2 kickout locations, the total preventive retrofit cost is under $1,000. The repair after damage has occurred is between 30 and 40 times that amount. There is no profit for the original roofer in installing the kickout during construction. There is enormous profit for the remediation contractor who shows up 7 years later and tells the homeowner that the entire wall has to come down. The system is not broken. The system is working exactly as designed by the people who profit from the failures. If you own a home built since 2007 and you have any roof-to-wall intersection where the bottom of a sloped roof meets a vertical wall above a gutter, here is exactly what you do this weekend. This is the single most valuable home inspection you will perform on your own house this year, and it costs $0 and takes less than 15 minutes per intersection. Walk outside. Stand in front of every location where this geometry exists on the exterior of your house. Look at the very bottom of the roof line, right where it meets the wall, immediately above where the gutter begins. You are looking for a small piece of bent metal that sticks out at roughly a 45-degree angle from the wall, redirecting water away from the siding. If you see it, your contractor did the job correctly. If you do not see it, your wall is on borrowed time. The next step is to go inside the house and find the wall directly behind that exterior location. Press your fingers against the bottom of the drywall, near the floor, on the side of the wall closest to the suspected leak. If the drywall feels soft, spongy, or cool to the touch, water has already reached the inside of the wall and the damage is in progress at this very moment. If the drywall feels normal and dry, you may have caught it in time. Either way, the next phone call is to a licensed roofer who can perform a thermal imaging inspection of the wall cavity. That inspection runs between $200 and $500 and tells you exactly how much water is sitting in the wall right now. If the answer is none, you install the retrofit kickout for under $1,000, and you are done forever. If the answer is some, you are now in a race against time, and the field guide linked in the description has the full chapter on how to document the failure for an insurance claim against the original builder, assuming the warranty period in your state has not yet expired. Most states give you between 4 and 10 years to file against a builder for latent construction defects under statute of repose laws. The clock is already running on every home that does not have the kickout installed. The pattern in this failure is the same pattern in every other failure documented in the field guide. A $4 component skipped during construction. A failure mode that takes between 5 and 15 years to become visible. A homeowner who has no way to know what to look for, because no one ever told him. And the home inspector he hired before closing did not tell him either, because the home inspector also does not know. An inspector who passed the framing because the framing looked fine on the day of inspection and never came back to verify the flashing details after the siding went up. A contractor who is no longer in business by the time the damage shows up, or who is still in business but legally protected because the warranty period has expired. And a repair bill that arrives years later when there is no one left to hold accountable, and the homeowner pays out of pocket because his insurance company classifies the damage as long-term wear and tear and denies the claim. The Atlanta home is one example. The 40,000 mold remediation jobs that happen in the United States every year because of missing kickout flashing are 40,000 more. The 7 out of 10 new homes being finished this week without the kickout are the next wave of repair invoices, due to arrive between 2031 and 2035. None of these are freak accidents. All of them follow the same playbook. And there are 72 more failure modes just like this one in the field guide I have been talking about throughout this video. I want to be clear about what this guide is and what it is not. It is not a replacement for a licensed roofer when your home shows active signs of water damage. It is not a replacement for a structural engineer when the rot has reached the framing and the load path is compromised. It is not legal advice for suing your builder under your state warranty laws, and you will need an attorney for that. What it is the inspection knowledge that 19 out of 20 American homeowners do not have, and that the average roofer will never volunteer, because volunteering it costs him a future remediation contract. Use it to know what to look for. Use it to know when to call a real professional. Use it to stop being the person who gets the $38,000 invoice in year 7. There are 3 more flashing failures I could not fit in this video. Step flashing reversed at chimney to roof intersections. Drip edge installed under the underlayment instead of over it at the eaves. Valley flashing nailed through the center of the valley instead of along the edges. They are in the pinned comment below with the exact contractor markup and material cost for each one. Click the comment now. You have 2 options when you finish this video. Option 1. Close the tab. Forget what you heard. Hope that the home you live in is one of the 3 out of 10 that has the kickout installed correctly. Hope that the inspector who signed off on your house caught the detail no one else catches. Hope that the roofer who finished your wall-to-roof intersections was the rare one who did it right. Hope that the previous owner of the house, if you bought it used, somehow had the failure repaired before you moved in without telling you about it. Hope that the rain in your part of the country is gentler than the rain in Atlanta. Hope is not a strategy. Hope is what the contractor is counting on. Option 2. Walk outside this weekend. Look at every roof-to-wall intersection on your house. Take a photograph of each one with your phone, even the ones where you cannot tell what you are looking at, so you have documentation. Click the link in the first line of the description. Download the American Homeowner's Field Guide. Read Chapter 41 tonight before you go to sleep. Compare the photographs you took with the diagrams in the chapter. Find the failures before they find you. The roofer is not coming back to fix what he did in 2007. The inspector is not going to call you with an apology. The builder is no longer in business in most cases by year 7. And even when he is, the warranty is gone. The only person who is going to protect your home is you, starting tonight. With the link in the first line of the description below this video. This channel investigates 1 construction failure per week. If you own a home in America, you need to be here. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The next investigation might be about the failure in your house. The kickout flashing has been required by code in the United States for over 15 years. 7 out of 10 new homes built since the requirement took effect do not have one. That is the country we live in. That is the construction industry that built the house you are sitting in right now. What they built, what they hid, what you need to know now.